We have right now, I think 43, could be 44. It's usually 43 or 44, 4-star generals and admirals. You have to think about that. We have a force of 1.1.
It seems like a lot.
Well, let me explain just how much it is. We have 1.12 million people in the armed forces. In other words, you add up all the armed services, that 1.12 million. In World War II, at the height of the war, end of 42, beginning of 43, when we had 12.2 million men under arms, we had 7 4-stars. 7 4-stars. I can tell you who they were. You had George Marshall, Chief of Staff of the Army, Douglas MacArthur commanding in the Pacific, Eisenhower commanding in Great Britain and in the European theater, Hap Arnold for the Air Force. Unofficially, he was the vice chief, but he was effectively commanding the air forces. And then you had Leahy, who was in the White House. Admiral Leahy as the liaison officer. He was effectively the unofficial chairman of the Joint Chiefs for FDR. Then you had Nimitz and King. King was the CNO, and Nimitz commanded in the Pacific. Now, somehow or another, with only 7 4-stars, we managed to survive the greatest, most destructive war in history, and fortunately end up on the quote-unquote winning side. Now we are blessed with 43 to 44 4-stars organized into multiple commands designed to blanket the globe with American military power and interest. I think it borders on lunacy, especially since we don't live in the world of 1920, 1945. This is the 21st century. Today, if you have forces forward, they're easy to identify, easy to target, easy to destroy. So what's the point of having a lot of forces forward? Well, we can always reinforce them. No, you can't. How do you get across these vast oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific, when your opponents have submarine fleets? How many ships do they have to sink, supply ships, transports, before everybody says, that's it, we're not going? Same thing true for aircraft. Well, we have better aircraft. We may have better aircraft, but we don't have very good air defenses. We've neglected air and missile defenses for years. In the Army, they always treated theater air and missile defense as sort of the redheaded stepchild because we haven't fought anybody that compelled us to defend ourselves from missile and air attack. Well, those days are over. People say, well, what about all the money we spent? That's a damn good question. You spend all this money, what are you getting for it? Where did the money go? Who's making the decisions? And you have separate services. Each service lives in its own world, has its own doctrine, its own bureaucracy, its own way of war. All this jointness is just, fugazi nonsense. And you got lots of generals, and every general has a reason to exist. And every general has 1,000 men in his headquarters, every 4-star. And every 4-star needs money for his projects. And this becomes a giant trough feeding frenzy for people on the Hill. And nobody ever bothers to stand up and say, why? What are we doing this for?